All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and I think almost good evening to a number of folks that we have on here as well. Welcome to another webinar in the WISER series. Today, we are going to have a long conversation with some amazing folks about cyber liability insurance. My ugly mug is not up on the screen because we have 6 esteemed guests, and apparently GoToWebinar can only support 6 cameras. It'll confuse the hell out if I put mine on. So you have me as a disjointed voice, and we have 6 pretty awesome people. So with that, I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna ask Kelly if she wouldn't mind starting and introducing herself, and then we'll pass the ball around.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining us today. I'm Kelly McGuinness. I'm the lead cyber underwriter for Markel Canada, and I'm pretty excited to get involved in the discussion today. So thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Paul, you next, please, sir.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Ferrillo. I'm a lawyer in a real big firm in New York City, and thank you to WISER and Chris for inviting me to participate today.
Cool. Trying to think who's the next furthest afield. I think Neil, it's either you or Simon. So let's go with Neil and then we'll hit Simon. Neil, you're up next, sir.
Thank you for having me on today. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil Gurnell. I'm the founder and CEO of Node International. We are a cyber underwriting agency that's tribunalized by Lloyd's of London and mainly active across North America.
Cool, thanks. Simon, actually, I think you were furthest afield. I apologize. So you're up next, sir. Go for it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Simon Campbell-Young. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called My Cybercare. We're a business that creates cyber insurance solutions for the greater insurance industry.
Cool, thank you, sir. Kadir, you're next closest.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Kadir Levent. I am the COO and MD in the UK of a cybersecurity company called CyberClan. We operate in the UK and across North America. That's the US and Canada from east to west coast. So really looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Jeff, you're closest to me at the moment, so unfortunately you get to go last, but definitely sure as hell not least. You're on, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everyone. Good day to everyone. My name is Jeff Mann. I am by day a trusted advisor consultant for a company called Online Business Systems. We focus on all sorts of security issues. My particular field of expertise beyond security in general is the payment card industry, PCI. I've been intimately involved with it for over 16 years. I have a side job as a podcaster, webcaster for an organization called Security Weekly Productions. I host a show called Security and Compliance Weekly. I am by trade a security professional, by hobby and lifestyle a hacker. And I've been in this industry for, well, I've been a hacker all my life. I've been working professionally for about 37 years in this field.
Nice, awesome. And
I think Chris has me on to be the dissenter of the group. I'm not sure.
There is a distinct possibility. All right, so let's start with the simple stuff. Obviously, the word cyber liability insurance has now been around and with our industry for a while. We've had conversations about it. We've had organizations use it as a crutch. We've had it used as an argument against doing anything. We've had all sorts of things. And it's been interesting to watch like the last year or two and see the change in the insurance industry. But I want us to take a step back and let's start with the basics and really let's have a conversation about why do we need it, is it needed, and everything else. And I'm going to kick off with Kelly on this one because let's face it, she's fair and square right in the middle of the knee deep into this industry. So Kelly, you're up first. Give me some thoughts. When you talk about cyber liability, how do you describe it? How do you discuss it with people and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, cyber liability essentially is your first and third party coverages for companies. So to protect and indemnify against network security liability. So if they were to be sued by a third party, should they have a breach themselves. You've got your media, which is primarily your online content, so liability around those issues, business interruption, extortion coverages. notification costs, PR costs, things of that nature. And to your point, Chris, there certainly has been more of a move towards including crime coverage, what was usually crime coverage, so social engineering, fraud, moving kind of more into the cyber liability coverages. Who should take out said coverage is essentially everybody. I think it would be easier to say who shouldn't take out cyber liability insurance. So if anyone didn't kind of operate on a network, need internet, store paper files or online files, things of that nature. So it encapsulates everybody, I think, and I think everyone should be more aware of their cyber exposure if they're not already.
Nice, thanks. I'm actually going to throw this one straight over to the lawyer that we have in the group, because I'm really interested. Paul, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on this one from your perspective and then from the client's perspective. Give me some thoughts on the logic behind all of this and the rise in it as well.
Cyber liability insurance pays for stuff. That's the best answer I can give you. War story, ransomware attack, client had 9 manufacturing facilities around the country. There were no backups, things needed to be rebuilt. Costs are very expensive from forensic consulting, cyber forensic consulting. Though I charge nothing for my fees, of course, haha. We ran up a bill of $500,000 in the first month. And that's not unusual in a big case like that. So, for many companies, again, leaving aside coverages, which Kelly accurately put her finger upon, for small to medium-sized businesses who may have a cyber attack, it could put you in bankruptcy. It could put you in financial distress. And cybersecurity insurance helps indemnify you for loss as a result of a cyber attack. Means it pays for stuff, Chris. And
that's a really good way of putting it. I mean, to that point, I'm going to throw it at Simon and then Neil. I'm interested from your guys' perspective, because obviously my assumption is you obviously have clients come to you and go, hey, look, I think I have a need. I want to have a need. Sort the wood from the trees and help me understand this. So give me some thoughts from your guys' standpoint. Simon first, if you don't mind, then Neil, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, so we're seeing the cyber market just explode, and I come from an IT background, and so we approach this insurance sector with an IT hat as opposed to looking at it as from an insurance standpoint. But certainly from our perspective, we're just seeing the sector explode. I mean, it's set to reach somewhere in excess of 30 billion as an industry by 2026. So it's literally just exploding, and we're seeing that explosion from our perspective in terms of the product creation that we do, right up from personal cyber straight through into the SMME sector, and then obviously into the enterprise sector. But certainly from our view is that you've just got to be a little bit cleverer in terms of the way you approach this cyberspace, because what you're looking to do at all times is technically you should be looking at what you're looking to do from a mitigation perspective. So our view is, for example, inside a premium, a really clever product should have all the mitigation tools embedded into the premium. So, from an organization or from a personal cyber or from an enterprise cyber perspective, the trick is to make sure that you've got, the perimeter protection, you've got, the right levels of threat detection and advanced threat detection built into the premium inside a cyber liability solution. It's a complex space, but actually, I think the clever way to approach it is really just to make sure that the solution is well placed and well versed against the current cyber landscape.
Got it. No, that's appreciated. We're actually going to hit some of that stuff about what should and shouldn't be in it in a minute. I want to kind of dig into that. Neil, give me your thoughts on this one. You get folks coming to you going, how, what, when, why, where, sort it out and talk English to me, please. Give me some thoughts. I'm appreciated.
Yeah, so I think I would echo really what Paul and Simon have touched on, that really one of the most exciting, or really one of the biggest benefits within a cyber policy at the moment is you're buying a pre-paid amount of services from a rapid response team of experts that are versed in this, deal with this type of event day in and day out. There's nobody learning on the clock. you've got the benefits of really leaning on leading expertise. So when we're building cyber products, and that's all we do, is we think about the people that sit behind the product versus just the indemnification cost that the insured would receive. We're not just about handing out money, we're about bringing in the cavalry when it goes wrong and getting the insured back up and running with the least amount of interruption as possible.
Got it. No, that makes sense. Kadir, I mean, you and the crew over at CyberClan are, let's face it, at the pointy end of this one by far and away. Give me your thoughts on this one. How useful? How much have you seen it be used? How is the industry working? Give me some high-level thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I agree with what everybody said here. I think the perception, usually with insurance, is it's one of those things you kind of have to have, but when something goes wrong, you never actually get anything out of it. So it's kind of one of those costs that nobody generally sees the benefits. Now, my experience with cyber insurance, and I have a bit of a cyber insurance background as well, is it seems to be a completely different space, and that the amount of claims that I see get paid firsthand is far greater than any other insurance line that I've seen. And I think one thing that Paul mentioned is absolutely right. I think the costs of these incidents can be astronomical, and it's not just a matter of, my laptop broke, I'll just replace it, $400 or $500, pounds, whatever it might be. There's a lot more to that, and there's the privacy implications, there's the legal implications, there's the business interruption implications, and it varies so much from state to state, country to country. And I think, like what Neil said, it's a way of you having a mechanism of support that you otherwise wouldn't have, and it helps you to take things into consideration that you wouldn't normally consider. And I definitely like what Simon said as well, that the support that you actually get through these cyber policies, it's not just about putting the net underneath you. Actually, they provide a lot of proactive services as well. So it's preparing you in the event of an incident. Actually, we're going to help you before that happens, and we're going to help you with your defenses, because we see it every day. We see incidents every day, and you mentioned it as well. It's very hard when you're the victim of that incident, because you only see that one incident. But what we see incidents on a daily basis. So we already know how to deal with those incidents, and we already know things to take into consideration. So absolutely, I think cyber insurance opens up a whole league of people that you wouldn't otherwise even consider contacting.
Jeff, any thoughts on this one? I'm interested from your perspective, from like how you are having conversations with clients and everything.
Sure. I have many comments, mostly in the forms of questions, and what I crave from my esteemed panelists is details. Quick background: in my years at PCI, I was for many years what was called a QSA, Qualified Security Assessor. One of my customers for many years, a company maybe you guys have heard of, the TJX companies. They were one of the first major breaches back in the mid to late 2000s, and they suffered tremendously costs in terms of, and I've tried to categorize a few of these costs. Certainly the forensics activities, trying to figure out how things went wrong. What I loosely call their PR campaigns. How do they deal with the public and all the people, whether it's investors or whether it's the consumer buying public, how do they deal with everybody? Fines associated with not being, in this case, PCI compliant. The costs of remediation, all the fixes that they had to put in place. And then finally, liability civil suits. I believe there was if memory serves, TJX settled with the attorneys general of 48 or 50 of the states all at once, and they agreed to sort of one global settlement. So in terms of questions for the group, when you say it pays for stuff, what does it pay for? And more importantly, what doesn't it pay for? If I'm a consumer, which is an organization that's considering purchasing liability insurance, my question is, what do I get for what I'm paying for? And again, more importantly, what don't I get? Either it's not covered, or I might be disqualified or not be able to file a successful claim because of something that I might not be doing. And just a final comment, you guys are working in the industry. When this first came on the scene, I first became aware of cyber insurance probably 5-6 years ago. My concern at the time was I had customers that were saying, this security is all too complicated. Why don't I just get an insurance policy and be done with it? My concern then, and I still have this concern today, is that if you're not doing the basics, in this context, PCI compliance, and you think you're going to get away with having stuff paid for in the event of a breach with a cyber insurance policy, you might have a rude awakening because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, but my understanding at the time, or my belief at the time, was an insurance policy is not going to give you coverage if you're not doing the basics, and the basics in this instance might be PCI compliance. So if you think me, the assessor, the QSA, is being tough on you for not following requirements, what is an assurance adjuster going to do in terms of dinging you and denying your claim? I've thrown a lot at you guys. I will pass the mic back to whomever you want to pass it to, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it. So we have a decent list of questions I was going to bash around and have the conversations about. I'm actually getting some interesting questions coming in from the panel, from various folks listening in. I'm actually going to throw this one, Kelly, to Jeff's point, and actually to a couple of the points that are on here. One of the biggest challenges we saw in the industry when it first started was it felt like cyber liability policies were almost being given out with a bag of cornflakes. It's like, oh, you want a policy, and the joke was simple. To Jeff's point, with PCI world, you had to not just prove that you had the firewall, you had to prove it had inbound logs, outbound logs. I mean, every single freaking thing to mankind. HIPAA just wanted to make sure that you were nice enough to have a firewall, and that the cyber liability world really just, did you understand what the hell a firewall was? And that was the standing joke. I've seen some change, so I'd love your perspective on, if I come to you, and if like Simon and Neil come to you and go, hey, we got clients and they have policies, how much more in depth is the industry now going to ask all the questions? What do you care about and what do you not care about? And that's definitely more than a minute, but go for it.
Okay, thanks for acknowledging that off the bat. So first of all, Jeff, to your point, everything essentially that you mentioned previously that was part of that claim would have been covered under a fairly robust standalone cyber policy. But to your point, in terms of PCI compliance and things of that nature, the industry is constantly evolving, and so too are the insurance carriers. So all of the above would be part of my underwrite at the moment. If Jeff came to me as a company that he represented and said, I need X, Y, and Z coverage, I would be asking those questions initially. So prior to even it going as far as the claim, upfront and honest, I would say, are you PCI compliant? There are some, middle market stuff, such as like brokers that you deal with first, who would ask you all those things and kind of bring you through and train you through what PCI compliance is, etc. When it comes to the stage of the application, we have a really robust application that I formed in a Markel, which is a 12-page app. It does ask all of those questions, straight from the bat, so it's fully transparent, and it does act as, I guess, a risk mitigation tool in itself. The application, if someone isn't aware that they should have backups, they will go back and ask their broker at that time, why is Markel asking me if I've got backups? What is that? What is PCI compliance? Which is a question I do get asked, believe it or not, Jeff. So at that point, it is underwritten too. And if they are not PCI compliant, that specific coverage will be removed from their policy until potentially the next year, where at that point they have done everything that they need to, and we will add that back onto their coverage. But it's a two-pronged approach where the risk is on both the client and the insurer, and trying to do the best that they can in terms of mitigating the loss.
No, I appreciate it. Simon, question for you, which is definitely along the same lines. How do you get clients almost like pre-ready for cyber liability insurance? There's some interesting questions that are coming in which are, you know, from the assessment stuff. In other words, you got clients coming to you, and Neil will hit the same thing as well. You got clients coming to you saying, hey, I want cyber liability. You obviously understand what Kelly and the likes of Kelly's other organizations are going to look for. How much readiness and preparedness are you having to do with clients these days to get them ready for cyber liability insurance?
Yeah, so I guess less and less, just as you know, the cyberspace is becoming, you know, people understanding it better. But essentially, you know, we're looking to ensure at any one point in time that pre a policy, you know, our solutions are actually embedded within an organization's network or being rolled out on desktops and so on and so forth. But for us, generally, we're looking to provide a number of solutions on the front end. The insurance is really sitting way on the back end, and assuming that all of our fail safes fail, then we pay out. But technically, the basics for us in terms of preparedness is, look, we want to get a pen test running as soon as possible. We want to, you know, make sure that the client is worthy to cyber insure, and then we want to maintain that pen testing on an ongoing basis. But, you know, the basics for us that we're throwing into every single product, every single policy, we're chucking in an advanced threat detection. We're having a look at the post-breach analytics. We definitely are including a backup and a disaster recovery solution. We've got a dark web monitoring tool that we chuck into the mix as well. And then we obviously logically put in the perimeter, you know, the perimeter defense in terms of a security solution. So in terms of client preparedness, geez, we want to have them bristling with protection, so that sitting on the back end is this insurance product that we going, look, you're going to call on the payout right at the very end, but we sure as hell we're going to protect the hell out of you right up front. And if somebody can get through all of our systems, including our wiser cyber training,
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for
that. So, and I think it's, I'm sure you'll find the same from Kadir and from Neil. I think that seems to be the logic space at the moment.
Yeah, actually, before I hit Neil and Kadir, Paul, I mean, you're obviously, you know, elbow deep in so many clients as well. What are you advising them to think about when they are considering like cyber liability insurance?
Well, I happen to have been lucky enough to have helped one or two of the carriers with their underwriting forms. At least in the United States, Chris, you know, I try to focus clients on the NIST cybersecurity framework, which many carriers actually follow along as an underwriting tool to see if you're doing the basics. And at least in the United States, it's something that, you know, in fact, finds itself into plaintiffs' security class action complaints. So I try to get them focused on that. And the biggest thing that I do, frankly, is talk about vulnerability and compromise assessments and incident response, business continuity, and crisis communications plans. I think any insurer is going to ask about those basic questions. There's 1,000 others that can be done, but if you don't have an incident response plan, and surprisingly so, many clients, many insureds don't have them, then what are you doing if you're not even ready to respond to a breach, an attack, a ransomware attack? So, yeah, you know, my answer is the framework provides at least a common reference point here in the United States for things that should be thought about, if not should be done.
No, that's appreciated. Thanks, Paul. Totally. Neil, similar question, but I'm going to twist it just a little, just to put you on the spot a bit, I'm afraid. There's some really good questions coming in from the audience, and one of them really hits. It's this conversation about how do you prepare clients literally to deal, not to deal with Kelly, but before they get to Kelly and Kelly has to underwrite and everything else. But I mean, the industry is moving so fast, technology is moving so fast. I mean, you're in the UK, you guys are kicking around the whole 5G shenanigans. How is cyber liability insurance, and how are you, and like you, Simon and Kadir, dealing with teaching your clients about the fast moving technology? How are you protecting, and what are you doing to help the insurance folks on that side of the world?
Good question. So I think you're right, much like technology innovation, is moving so quickly. By default, we have to move quickly with it. So we're constantly, as a company and within London, looking at the latest technologies, the latest risks that are occurring, the latest patterns that are occurring in this space, and then doing as much as we can to both educate through primitive kind of educational training, as well as using cyber to help cyber mitigate some of the risks. But I would say we're definitely seeing a lot more people who are coming to us for the first time who've actually experienced an event, trying to ask us to insure them, and actually we can't, because at that particular landing, they're not insurable, and to which we're then engaging with some of our partners to make sure that we get them enabled, secure, and in a position where they are insurable. And that's something that has only really happened over the last 6 months. So we've definitely seen a large shift in people just buying the insurance. We're actually now coming to us and us doing more of an assessment because they're actually uninsurable because of events that they've been through. And they're very open to talking with us. They're very open to putting these parameters in place. If anything, we're seeing insurance and InfoSec security provisions and organizations move closer together, which is fantastic, because historically insurance and InfoSec security provisions have always, there's been a bit of a divide between them, but we're definitely seeing it come together.
Got it. No, that's appreciated. I mean, it's there seems to be a ton of stuff that's actually out there, and I think again it's evolving as quickly as humanly possible. I'm actually interested on this one. There's a good question that came in about some of the caveats. I mean, we all know this from Neil. I mean, you hit this one, which is if you're having an event or had an event, the chances of getting insurance are like, you know, nigh on snowball's chance in hell. To me, I mean, I always, and Kelly, you're welcome to cringe and yell at me, I always relate this back to the car insurance world. It's like, you know, if I'm going to have a crash, it's no good calling up the insurance company just before the car hits the wall and go, hey, I'd love to get insurance in the next 2.5 seconds. Actually, yeah. So Kelly, I'm interested from your standpoint, as you see all of these come in, as you know, Simon and Neil and everybody around here is talking with you and looking at the insurance. What are you seeing from like exclusions from clauses, or that will make you take a step back and go, you know, I'm not sure we want to deal with this? Any thoughts on that one?
I mean, at the moment, I think the hot topic is probably war and acts of war, cyber terrorism, things of that nature that might affect, you know, big financial institutions, you know, especially with China and things, and the US, everything being so disjointed, I guess you could say. So that's certainly something that I would say at the moment is kind of a hot topic, and one which, you know, frankly, not everybody needs to be concerned about. Your SME business certainly doesn't need to be worried about a war exclusion. A lot of the time, cyber terrorism is carved back in. But to your point, you know, they're not everything is insured, you know, same as your car insurance, if you want to go back to that. So it is important that you do get you know, a solid broker such as Marsh or Aon, somebody like that, if you're, you know, one of the bigger companies out there, and they'll essentially do that for you. So they'll compare all your wordings and ensure anything that you need is kind of in there. So that's kind of the hot topic, I would say, at the moment. But it again varies from year to year. So
all right. So I'm actually going to throw something actually between both Jeff and Kadir to have this kind of conversation, the pair of you, just for the heck of it on this one. Jeff actually asked a really good question, which is, you know, the who pays for here. Jeff, you ask it, because I actually like the question you shot out to me just now about the who asks it and the ratio and stuff like that.
I'm hearing in the conversation so far that cyber insurance is sort of a necessity. At least you guys view it as a necessity for all organizations. I work with organizations that struggle to pay for the security that they, at least the people that work in security, think that they need within corporations. So I have a two-part question. Who are you finding that typically pays for these insurance policies within organizations versus who pays for what I'll loosely call the security? And in that context, what do you see as sort of the ideal ratio between how much do you invest of your limited budget in security, let's say prevention, to use the term loosely, versus insurance, and I'll use the cure to use the term loosely.
Well, I can definitely pick up, some of that. So I can talk to in terms of what we've seen in terms of the decision makers. Generally, we deal with people that look after risk within an organization. So again, it depends on the size of the organization, but yeah, generally we don't really deal much with the kind of the head of IT or anyone like that. It's someone who's looking at the overall risk and exposure to the organization, that's interested in what the insurance policies may or may not look like. So that's my experience, and I'm sure Kelly, Simon, those guys might, and even Neil will have maybe some different points on that. But in terms of the your point around how much should an organization potentially be spending on security as opposed to insurance, what I will say, just from my experience and dealing with a lot of different SMEs, an insurance policy, from what I see, although it's a safety net, it isn't the be all and end all, right? Because where the insurance policy will cover various legal costs and whatever else, and forensics costs and instant response costs, what it covers to a limited extent is going to be the reputational damage to your organization. And this is what I've seen. So yes, they will cover that on various policies, but actually the long-term impact on that, a cyber incident could take you years to recover from. Depending on what your organization does and what that looks like, it literally could take years. So I think that the way you combat that is to invest into your security to prevent it happening in the first place. And in the event that it does happen, that's where you've got that safety net of, okay, well, at least someone's going to help me recover from some of these costs. So how much you spend on your security, I couldn't say. I mean, at the end of the day, it varies from business to business depending on what your risks are. What I would say is start with a risk assessment. That's what you need to do. You need to look at your organization. You need to bring a third party in who understands what's going on out there in the world and in this space, who can really help you identify, actually, in your industry, with what we see out there in the world, these are your exposures, these are your risks. And then based on that, we can then talk about maybe what you need to budget to combat that.
So actually, I'm gonna throw this at Paul in a second, but then I want to hit both Simon and Neil on this one, because I'm really interested. To Jeff's point, if I go and spend a countless amount of millions or tens or hundreds or thousands on this, does it actually lower? Does it actually impact how much I'm going to pay for insurance? I want to know that one in a second. I want people's thoughts on that one. All right, Paul, go for it. You're up next.
There was a question here about the act of war exclusion and what it really means. Kelly is right that for 90% of the population, the act of war exclusion doesn't apply. But here's why it's a big problem. An act of war exclusion could say, we allege claims, we allege no coverage for claims arising out of strikes and labor action, war, invasion, military action, whether the war is declared or not, civil war, mutiny, popular and military uprisings, guns, bullets, planes, bombs. And when you look at these exclusions, you say to yourself, how on earth do you possibly say what's an act of war? And that's been the major problem, and that's been the problem that's been discussed, and I've discussed it with the federal government. Not everything is an act of war. For a standalone security insurance policy, these exclusions have largely been diluted to the point where they don't apply. For the big insureds, there can be wording and amendments done to these exclusions which talk about guns, bullets, bombs, planes, missiles, and things which could mean act of war. The U.S. carriers have been very open to considering those changes. Sorry to my panelists, but the Lloyd's and London insurers have generally want to keep the act of war exclusion existing. And I think the third point is, for companies like Merck and FedEx and others, they've tried to get cybersecurity insurance on endorsements to general liabilities or casualty policies. that's been the problem, where the scope of coverage is not as broad as the policy that Kelly may talk to you and sell you. And, you know, Chris, in a large part, again, is it's very difficult to tell what is an act of war. In the United States, we have some guidelines about it, but it shouldn't be a problem if you pay attention to the wording and, you know, for the right client, amend the word to make sure it doesn't apply.
Yeah, and that's a huge one. I mean, it's, you know, I sat in front of a very interesting panel of, oops, what the hell was that? I sat in front of a very interesting panel of military folks fairly recently. We're getting some feedback, by the way, guys. One of you, there's some weird feedback coming through the speakers. I sat through a very interesting panel fairly recently with a whole bunch of interesting folks from the military, and we all agreed we're at war. End of discussion. We're already at war. In a digital world, we are at war. End of discussion, no questions asked. At which point, that does bring into question all these policies. But I kind of want to go back to a second and back to the conversations that we had a little bit about, like not just the event stuff, but the ratios between spend and insurance that Jeff brought up. Neil, let me hit you first if you don't mind. Give me some thoughts on that one. The ratio of, you know, when you're talking to clients about cyber liability, the ratio between how much they spend on prevention versus cure, that side of things, I'd be really interested in.
No, sure, absolutely. And we are, I mean, we are in the digital risk assessment game, so it's a very logical question. So we spend a lot of time and have moved around on this point on how we best assess in a very limited amount of time what the level of security is, both good, bad, or indifferent with an insured. So we work on a premise of we don't have a fixed ratio, but we certainly have different premium loading when it comes to whether we perceive an insured to take it very seriously, maybe seriously or not seriously enough, which would massively swing the charge that we charge for the premium. So I don't think, we certainly look at frequency. So we want to know over the last 12 months how much they've spent and what they've done. But I think it would be hard for me to give you a fixed percentage. We certainly do look at it closely though, and we do reward, or it does have a positive impact on the premium that we would charge, most certainly.
Got it. Okay, no, that's interesting. Simon, any additional thoughts on that one?
Yeah, you know, like Neil and was saying, I think, you know, we want to make sure that you know, we're protecting the asset, and therefore we need the asset to have an ongoing clean bill of health. And I think that we draw a correlation to the bill of health, you know, to, for example, the ongoing premium and how that premium then needs to be loaded, or how that premium can be adjusted in terms of the pricing. Logically, if we're working with a customer, or we're working inside an organization that is you know, well protected, that we can work with them in terms of they understand the threat landscape, they understand what's happening at an advanced threat level, and understanding what's happening at a monitoring level, then it really makes it a lot easier for us to manage the cover levels. It really makes it a lot easier for us to manage the premiums. And there's definitely a correlation, because there's not a one size fits all. And I think, I'm sure, Kelly, you're probably seeing it now, and I guarantee Kadir and Neil are seeing it. If you have a look at cyber liability in terms of the enterprise space, you know, it's a 10-page questionnaire, it's large documentation, it's heavy reading. But the minute you start getting into the SME space, you know, you're looking at you know, you need to be talking about cyber liability light in terms of policy wording, exclusions, sign up, and then all of the ability to be able to manage that client. So yeah, definitely not a one size fits all, and definitely you need the scope to be able to manage the premium, manage the cover levels, and therefore be able to monitor the costs for the various organizations.
Got it. And it's, you know, so yeah, there's some weird feedback, somebody. Something that's actually worthwhile thinking about, and we're talking about it behind the scenes, is, can you guys mute when you're not talking? There's some really weird feedback. All right, way better. Thank you. So one of the things that we talked about, and actually for the audience, there's a conversation going on between all of us behind the scenes, which is very much a case of, you know, as much as we try to standardize things and everything else, your market, your exposure, the vertical you're in, the companies, the organizations you talk to and you work with, the things you manufacture and way you do things. How much are you seeing that play into how cyber liability insurance is actually assessed from a risk? Kelly, I'm going to ask you that question quickly, if you don't mind. Hang on, you're on mute now.
Okay, sorry. Typical that I'd have a tech difficulty. Could you just streamline your question so I fully understand it, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot about, like, you know, risk and liability and insurance. How much weighting do you put on like vertical markets? In other words, if you're insuring a bank versus somebody who's manufacturing widgets, and then maybe country specific or where they reach and who they do. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, sure. Look, to go back to what you mentioned earlier, it's as simple as like car insurance, right? So if you have a 10-year claims-free driving record, you're going to get, you know, a less premium, and it's similar to that when it comes to cyber insurance. So when I underwrite an account, I look at risk class. So what industry are they in? For example, professional services at the moment, such as lawyers, are getting hit very hard with ransomware and social engineering fraud. So I'll underwrite specifically to that when I look at those kind of industries. As well as that, what you want to look at is their revenues, you know, to assess the business interruption cost potential there. And then you're going to look at their cyber hygiene. So, you know, you're not going to insure a house that's on fire. Equally, you're not going to insure a client who has a lot of PCI records and aren't PCI compliant, right? So it does, there is a linear scale there where, you know, a large financial institution who's seeking, you know, $10 million in limits is going to be paying, you know, upwards towards around $100,000 in premium versus the SME business who are going to pay $2,500 for $1 million in limits. And I'd just like to, if it's okay with you, Chris, touch somewhat on what Jeff mentioned earlier in terms of the ratios. So I don't think that a lot of people are aware at the moment, certainly at Markel anyway. We do offer like an educational piece, so you're not just buying insurance to indemnify you, but there is a pre and post breach service there too. So pre-breach, you can actually access such tools as the eRisk Hub that we have at Markel, and that's very educational and can help the SME businesses in terms of, you know, educating employees on awareness training for phishing, things of that nature. A half-an-hour free call with a breach coach, to your point, Neil, earlier on, as well as penetration tests and things of that nature. So the insurer, you can see, is expanding on their services year over year. So I think, you know, there is a lot to be said for that.
All right, appreciate it. That was really, yeah, that actually helped a ton. All right, so we have 15 minutes left to go. There's a couple of questions I definitely want to hit. I'm looking at some of the questions on here. I'm getting some good ones, but I'm getting some that are a little spacey. So we're having one of those days today, apparently. I tell you what I do want to hit before we actually go any further. I want to talk about the riders. I want to talk about other things. What I do want to ask every single one of you, Kelly, you're going to go last on this one, is I want to hear from each one of you. How would you choose? What would you classify as a good insurance company, and how would you choose that good insurance company? And I want, literally put a timer on yourself. You got a minute. I know Paul's like, oh shit. You knew it was coming. You know that people want to know this. They want to know the questions to ask. All right, I'm going kind of in reverse on this one. Again, keep it to a minute. Kadir, you're up first.
Oh, great. Throw me in the fire. Thank you. Okay. So based on my experience with cyber insurance, and you know, I have purchased cyber insurance for our organization. I think the biggest thing that I'd be looking out for when choosing a policy is the claims experience, because ultimately anybody can sell anything, but when push comes to shove and you make that claim, that's where you need to have that best support and that best experience. And really, I think, you know, again, for all the brokers out there, I think you're really relying on either, you know, your friends and colleagues that may also have insurance and may have had an experience, or I would be speaking to your broker who again sees the claims and sees what those experiences look like. It's constantly changing. I think what might be a great insurance company today might not be the same next week. Same with the responses. So I think ultimately, I'd say to speak to your broker, trusted broker, or your friends and your colleagues. But the claims experience for me.
Neil, you're up next, sir. Give me some thoughts. What does it take?
I'll give you some thoughts. Yeah, very similar to Kadir. Pick a good broker. Pick somebody that knows the different policies that are in the market. It is a bit like the Wild Wild West in that there's many different policies on the market that do many different things, both good and bad. You want to find someone that's an expert in the space, not a generalist. You want to find somebody that has a very strong panel that sits behind the policy, and one that, similar to what Kelly mentioned, that does a lot of pre and post breach sort of services and consultancy. So once you've got a policy, it doesn't just end and go in the filing cabinet. There's lots of resources and educational portals and advice that the insurer will give with you to help keep you safe. They would be my tips.
Actually, all right, so here's a question. Before we actually hit this one, and this is maybe something somebody else can touch on. We all know the car insurance companies in the UK, in the US, and around the world, and I'll bring it back to car insurance. But how the hell, I mean, where the hell do you find it? Is this where Google comes into play, or, you know, DuckDuckGo or something? Where do people ask these questions? When the general public, or when I'm starting up a company, how the hell do they ask? I mean, who do they ask? Where do they find this information out? Is it simply a Google search? Do they ask their current brokers? Do their current brokers even ever?
No, well, it depends on the broker. Certainly from a broker standpoint, an educated broker, it's part of their job to research and ascertain which are the best products in the marketplace for you, the client, and to speak with your advisor and ultimately answer these questions.
Got it. Paul, you're up. Come on, you're chomping at the bit. I want some thoughts on this one.
If I have a client buying $300 million of cybersecurity insurance, and I do, they better freaking pay my claim. That's how I look at carriers. All these pre-breach and post-breach services, I think the training is so important. I wish it could be mandatory training. But, you know, in the large part, when you're reporting to a board of directors, Chris, they're going to say, oh, cyber insurance never pays for anything. So if I'm the one recommending cyber insurance, they better pay my claim.
Got it. No, that's actually appreciated. And that's really to Kelly's point, which is, hey, we're not here just to insure. We're here to help. We're here to educate. We're here to give some thoughts on things. There seems to be a common theme. You know, unlike, again, you can't relate it to car insurance. Car insurance says, here's your insurance, have a nice day. Yes, you get a good driver discount, but they're not going to help you train. They're not going to help you learn. They won't send you to driving school and all that kind of shit. It does sound like in this industry, the cyber liability insurance companies are stepping up, recognizing there's a problem, and some of them are at least teaming up to do something about it. All right, so back to the original question. Simon, you're up next, sir. I'm as dumb as a box of rocks. I have absolutely no freaking clue. A, how do I find you? And B, how the hell do I know what to ask?
Okay, so certainly what we're seeing is that in that broker space, we're seeing a lot more brokers starting to adopt cyber, which is great. If I go back 3 years, you know, none of the brokers, or very few of the brokers were in cyber. So we can see a lot more of them adopting cyber, which is a really good thing. And I think it's up to people like us on the panel to make sure that we are you know, onboarding more and more of the brokerages to be able to, you know, onboard or embed cyber policies into existing policies, or start a new line in terms of cyber. So that would be a logical new place to go. But just in terms of you know, the original question, where would I go? What would I do? Yeah, it's definitely a combination of what Kadir and Neil said, no doubt. And then, you know, obviously Paul hit the nail on the head just in terms of the claims procedure. But for me as well, what I think is simplified policy wording. You know, there's an element of needing it to be layman-ish. Kelly, I know you won't agree, but you know, the policy wording needs to be fit for purpose. And if it looks like Greek, it's going to be Greek by the time you're claiming. So you know, make sure it's simple. If it's not simple, get someone to explain it to you so that you understand it really, really simply, because for me, that would be the key. Yeah, that's my point.
No, I appreciate it. Kelly's jumping in a bit, but I want Jeff to hit this one first. So Jeff, give me some thoughts on this, please.
As quick as I can, I'm hearing several assumptions. One, that I, the one seeking insurance, actually know what I'm talking about in terms of security and what my needs are. So it's not, to me, just a matter of asking the right questions. It's like, who do I ask and how do I know I'm the one to hear the right answer? To that degree, I'm not in this position. I would tend to go to whoever my current insurance company is and probably start with them and probably seek a rider because I don't know any better, because I want the cheapest that's going to provide me some promise of some sort of coverage, but I don't know any better. So I think as an admonition to you guys, it's how do you make your customer an educated, smart consumer at the same time trying to sell them something.
No, that's hugely appreciated. All right, Kelly, actually, there's so much more I would love to dive into this one. I mean, this could be a whole flipping webinar on its own. What questions to even understand to ask, to understand to know to ask. You know, it's so crazy out there. All right, Kelly, you're up on this one.
Well, I think step one is find yourself a good broker. A good broker should be able to assess the fact that you've got cyber exposure, and that's number one, and that's key. And then when you find that broker, you say, do you have a relationship with Kelly McGuinness at Markel? And then you go from there. No, I'm joking. No, what you're really going to want to look out for in terms of a carrier is, you know, to echo my esteemed panelists, would be the claims experience, right? So what's key in the claims experience is whether or not that claims team is domiciled in the country that you're in. A lot of the time with particular carriers, you're looking at claims teams that are based out of London or other locations, which are in different time zones, and it's less effective, right? So I think that that's a key point to look out for, as well as, of course, the reputation around that insurance company. And as well as that, I would be looking into pre and post breach services. I think that the panel that a company has behind them for, you know, a breach situation says a lot and speaks a lot to, you know, how important or how good, I guess, the insurance company are, right? So I'm not going to give the Markel spiel here, but certainly I would say to look at the panelists and ensure that you know, they have a strong team behind them and base it from there. And one quick thing I would mention, Jeff, that one of the biggest mistakes I see companies making is taking out riders onto, you know, a property insurance policy and things of that nature, where there is a cyber risk and they just try and, you know, throw on an additional coverage for $500. And I would hope that every broker in Canada and worldwide would clearly say to the client, you have a cyber risk, put in the extra $2,000 and take out the standalone cyber policy. And that's something that we need to keep hammering home, because, you know, if there's an exposure there, it needs to be fully insured, and the transfer of the risk has to be made. Otherwise, when it comes to claims time, you're going to see the doors closed from the insurance company, and rightfully so.
So actually, Jeff just hit a really good point, and there's something, Kelly, that follows on from your stuff. I mean, we're all in this industry. I mean, you know, Simon, Neil, Paul, Kadir, Kelly, we're all in. We've all got one foot in security, at least. Some of us have got 2 feet and a solid head in it, but you're all basically at least 1 foot in this industry. How can we help the industry? How can the security industry, how can the hackers help? How can we actually help do this? Is this something where we need to educate ourselves to talk to the likes of Simon, Kadir, and Neil? What can we do as the security industry to help this? I'm actually throwing that one completely open to any of you to have this conversation.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think it starts from the conversations that we're having right now. Anyone that puts their hand up from an insurer perspective, I think, you know, you need to have these collaborative efforts to learn for your insurance company, but also to help clients learn too. I'm sure there's a vast array of people who are actually listening into this call at the moment, and we're all learning from each other. And Chris, to echo what you said at Net Diligence, you know, there has to be a collaborative effort amongst everybody in the cyber industry, and that's the only way we're going to actually ever counter what hackers are doing. So I think for companies to have conversations like this, but also similar to my point earlier, to speak to the vendors. So I'm constantly in touch with our forensic investigation teams, and asking what's the hot topic at the moment, what should I be looking out for, things of that nature. So I think education is key, and collaboration.
I mean, I would just like to add on that point as well, that what we've done is that when we set up the company, we were very aware that there was an opportunity to bring both InfoSec security and insurance together. So we're currently, as an operational basis, we're sort of 60% insurance, 40% InfoSec provision. So we've hired InfoSec security professionals that work for us to not only work alongside the underwriting team, but also advise the brokers and sometimes the insureds to help try and close that gap. And we've also formed partnerships with managed service providers to try and bring, as you say, that conversational piece closer together.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Paul, you got any thoughts on this one? I mean, again, you've got one foot in both camps, definitely.
I think I have 2 feet in both camps in some respect, representing both clients and carriers. It goes down to simple as best. It goes down to no geek speak, no tech speak. I think Simon said, if it reads like hieroglyphics, it probably is hieroglyphics. And you know, I find a lot of carriers actually come to their lawyers who do this every day, who respond to breaches, who respond to investigations, and say, well, what do you think, Paul? What's the most important thing about, you know, should be done? Is it just about my CTO or CISO performing vulnerability assessments quarterly? Is it just about, you know, machine learning intrusion detection devices? Or is it about the coverage? Or is it about everything? And I think the truth is, it's about everything. And the more the CISOs and CTOs and CIOs can add to the mix, I think the better the information gap gets cured. Jeff was saying, and I believe that it's a good point, there's an information gap here. And unfortunately, even the existing brokers, sometimes present company excluded, haven't been able to cure that information gap. And we all need to do a better job, because at the end of the day, there is a social purpose on keeping companies alive that get a ransomware attack. If they have good cybersecurity insurance, that'll pay for the remediation and pay to get them back up and running. It saves jobs. And I think we should be thinking about the purposes behind cybersecurity insurance. I know that's a convoluted answer, Chris, but I do believe everything matters when you're talking about cybersecurity.
No, you're right. That's kind of hit the nail on the head, that one. Jeff, you got some thoughts on this one, and then Simon, I'll hit you up. I want some thoughts from you.
Well, I was just thinking, you know, in my career as a consultant, and again, primarily in the PCI world, I cannot think of one time where a customer has ever asked me as a secure, you know, a trusted advisor, hey, what kind of cyber insurance should I buy, or should I buy it? And I think part of that's because it's, and we talked about this on our prep call, because it's currently not required. PCI does not require any company to have a cyber insurance policy. So if I'm somebody that I'm hearing you guys would love to have be informed and be able to say, hey, you should, you know, get a cyber insurance policy and go to these guys to talk about them, how do I know that? I being a representative sample of the, you know, cybersecurity expert community.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Simon, give me some thoughts on this, and then we better get into closing comments.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is that and Neil made the point earlier, just in terms of the percentage of 1 foot in cybersecurity and the other percentage in insurance. So you know, we come out of the tech distribution space, so we're 80% cybersecurity tech, and then we built our insurance solutions out of that, but coming from an innate tech background. So what I can tell you is that in terms of the global tech brands that we carry, represent, that are in our stable, we've seen over the last 12 to 18 months a bigger convergence than ever before in terms of the tech stack and the insurance market. We see a lot of these global vendors creating specific solutions that are geared specifically for cyber insurance. whereas that was never the case before. So I think that is going to be the norm going forward. I see you know, that cyber insurance market and that cybersecurity market really tracking closely to each other on the road ahead, and really a very, very tight convergence.
Got it. All right, so we have hit the top of the hour. We'll give the 30 seconds if everybody would like to close out. It would be hugely appreciated. Couple of things on the closeout. Please let everybody on the audience know where they can find you. And absolutely thankful. Kelly, please lead us off if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks very much for having me on today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Second of all, where you can find me is LinkedIn. And if you need any help on your own cyber insurance, go through your broker and ask for Markel. To close off, I would say to everybody, be proactive, not reactive about your risk. Transfer your and know your risk, right? So if you think you don't have a cyber exposure, I guarantee that you do. So thanks again, everyone, and I look forward to more of these conversations in the future.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it. Jeff, you're up, sir.
Sure. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I've piqued my own interest in how do I become more informed about cyber insurance, because I feel like it's my duty as a trusted advisor to know this stuff because it is important. If you want to reach out to me, the easiest way is either on Twitter. My handle is at Mr. Mr. Jeffman, Jeffman, or you can email me if you do that kind of thing, jeff@securityweekly.net.
Brilliant, thank you, sir. Kadir, you're up, sir.
Yeah, equally like the other guy said, this has actually been, you know, a great session, and hopefully it's given all the viewers and listeners out there some insight into this space. I think hopefully what you also recognize is there's lots of support out there. So everything from the security advisors to insurance to legal. So I think for anybody that's listening and isn't sure about this, there are lots of people you can reach out to. And honestly, it doesn't cost anything to pick up the phone and have the conversation just to get the information. So if you would like to hear more about what I do and what we do, you can visit our website, cyberclan.com. Alternatively, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'll be more than happy to link up and kind of explore, like what Kelly said, just to really help understand what your exposures may or may not be, and then you can take it from there. So thanks again, and I look forward to speaking to some of you soon.
Cool. Neil, sir, you're up next.
Thank you. Yeah, just echoing everyone else, thank you so much for such an interesting, insightful podcast, some really good questions. I think main takeaways, to insure or not to insure, it's certainly, we would hope that everybody is seeing that there is benefits to insure, and there's lots of ways in which you could learn more about it. So get involved, don't lean away from it, have the conversation. To find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. Just look me up, connect. We'd love to speak with everybody and anybody that's either directly linked or indirectly linked to this space. We run a podcast. We'd love to have some more guests on. So yeah, we look forward to doing this again.
Cool, thanks. Simon, sir, it looks like it's gotten dark outside of your neck of the woods. I've been watching the light set over the hills. You're up, sir. Closing thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me on the show. Thanks very much to the other panelists. It was great to actually hear all the views. I've learned a lot as well. So thank you. You know, my view on it is you know, as per Kelly, you need cyber insurance. The internet is not stopping. Crime is not stopping. Cyber crime is not stopping. Cyber insurance is a de facto requirement for all of us, from inside the home all the way up to the business. So we'd love to chat to you some more. You can look me up on LinkedIn, or you can have a look, get hold of us via our website. It's my-cybercare.com. Thank you very much.
Paul, if you wouldn't mind, please close us out, sir. It's been a pleasure.
You are a target. You will be hacked. You've already been hacked. Since you are a target, buy good, standalone cybersecurity insurance from a good carrier that will pay your claim. Best advice I could give anybody listening in on this call. If you need to reach me, it's at Ferrillo, Ferrillo, at MWE.com, or I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. But if you have an important question, please feel free to ask. And thank you all to Wiser and Gabe for inviting us to be a part of this panel. It's been a great hour and look forward to doing it again soon.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to the audience that joined. Thanks to the amazing questions. To each one of you, I am hugely grateful for this one, and obviously to Gabrielle and the folks over at Wiser for setting it up. Please have a safe and healthy afternoon, evening, nighttime, day, and I look forward to catching up with everybody afterwards. Again, thank you very, very much, everybody, for listening in. Thanks to everybody for being here. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, stay safe, and good luck. Ta-ta.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.